Welcome to the She Births Show, a place to inspire your birth, evolve your parenting, and help you live a life you love. I'm Nadine Richardson, your host and creator of the scientifically verified birth education program, She Births. I'm also a mother, yoga teacher, doula, author, and speaker. At She Births, we have supported thousands of families around the world for over 13 years with our unique program, and our vision is to make birth better for every family around the world so that everyone experiences a beautiful birth no matter what unfolds. Not only do we help people have beautiful births, but we also give them the skills and the philosophy to enjoy pregnancy and make parenting easier. As well as our world-class birth ed, taken either face-to-face or online in our app, we also have a free pregnancy guide designed to help you feel calm, connected, and inspired as you and your baby grow. We have a doula matching service, the perfect way to ensure you and your partner are completely supported throughout the whole journey. And we have our Soul Mama Circles, which are the perfect postpartum network to help optimize your mindset and design your life in parenthood. Remember, if you like what you hear today, subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. If you're a parent, about to be one, fellow health professional, join us now for an inspirational deep dive into topics with experts around the globe. We hope you enjoy this special episode. In a world where VBAC, vaginal birth after caesarean, seems like an insurmountable challenge, Hannah took a leap of faith. Listen in as we explore her journey, filled with lots of learning, determination, resilience, and the unwavering belief in her instinct and intuition. Today I'm talking with She Births mum Hannah Rodger about her 3 birth experiences. Across those stories, there are 2 hospital births, 2 C-sections, and 1 home birth transfer. We allow space for Hannah to harvest her birth experiences, to understand the growth and journey, the lessons and the gifts. And the gift of awe really stood out to me, as you will see in her photos too. Awe cannot be underestimated in our modern lives. Awe is profound. It brings a deep sense of belonging to the expansive universe, the interconnected universe, and it changes us and heals us. Awe is even an antidote to loneliness, according to some researchers. On socials, you can enjoy the wonderful photos taken by another She Births mum, Tessa Tran, who has also shared her amazing birth story across COVID with us on the show. This podcast is an epic unfolding like our motherhood journeys are, and it seems like Hannah is never going to achieve her natural birth, even up to the last minute at home when she starts to feel her C-section scar. Stay tuned to the very end where Hannah shares about her intuition across the pregnancies and births. I know you will find it insightful and probably resonate deeply. Hello, Hannah. Welcome to the She Births Show podcast.
That's indeed.
It's so exciting to have you. I feel like I only saw you like a few months ago. And since I saw you, you've had 3 babies.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 stepchildren. So now you're mother of 5 and you've got an amazing story to share with us today. I won't spoil this sort of the point that they're all 3 vasectomy babies as well. We'll just kick off with that surprise. So maybe,
yeah, I prefer the term miracle children, Nadine.
I know, miracle babies. Sorry, I'm just quoting you from before. I think it's hilarious and so clear that these little babies wanted to come through, obviously. Can you maybe give everyone who's listening just a little bit of background on who you are and what you do and all of that?
Of course. So my name is Hannah Rodger. I am, as Nadine said, a mum of five. I've got two beautiful teenage stepkids who are 17 and 14, Zach and Nina. I've been their stepmum for 8.5 years, and nearly 4 years ago had my son Harrison. And that was when I met you, Nadine, through the Soul Mama Circle. And I'm still in touch with quite a few of the beautiful women that I met through that. Then 2 years ago had my daughter Rose, and 3 weeks ago had my second daughter Ruby.
Wow. Just super fast work, lady.
Yeah, so we've currently got 3 under the age of 4, and to give you a little bit of, an insight into what that looks like in our household. Yesterday, the toddlers came back from daycare, and then all 3 of the kids pooed in their nappies at the same time.
Excellent. Yeah, 3 under 4. I'm getting the picture.
Yeah.
So you did she births. What called you to she births? What was the calling with that first pregnancy?
Yeah, so Harrison was born at the end of May 2020, and I did she births, I think it was April. I remember being quite heavily pregnant. I think I was about 34 weeks pregnant when I did the course. And a lot of my calling towards it was that we were already in that first lockdown and there was very little antenatal care available. I had spent the couple of years before I got pregnant getting sober and really cleaning up my lifestyle. So was really into eating healthily, eating organic food, getting lots of fresh air, exercising, sleeping well. And so when I came across she births, it really resonated with me as a, kind of holistic approach to, antenatal care, to birth preparation, and the idea of being empowered to go into a vaginal birth in the hospital system really appealed to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And what happened then for you in that birth and that process?
So I remember the she births course was one that you couldn't run in person.
Yeah.
So it was online. It was 2 days of kind of intensive online Zoom meetings. I've still got my book of notes from that.
Nice.
That I looked through for this birth as well. So going in, I felt pretty prepared, and I'd done all of the things to prepare me. And I was doing prenatal yoga and Pilates, and I was drinking raspberry leaf tea and eating way more dates than I can actually stomach in a day. And I felt like I was going to be able to have my vaginal birth and become a mother, and it was all going to be beautiful. My waters broke when I was watching TV on a Wednesday night. Wasn't really sure if that was what was happening or whether I just wet myself. I think that's quite common, but yeah, it was quite clear that that was my waters breaking. So I rang the hospital and they said, come in and we'll check you. And on the drive there, which was about a 15-minute drive from my house, contractions really ramped up, and all of a sudden, I had 3 contractions in the car in 15 minutes.
Wow.
And was kind of struggling to even walk up to the reception of the labour ward. So throughout my pregnancy, I had been at the birth centre at my local hospital with the idea that I was going to birth in the birth centre, which is, a more natural way of doing things. My birth preferences were, all around minimal intervention. And when I got to the hospital, the birth centre was closed because the midwives were all working in the labour ward.
Right.
So my kind of first expectation wasn't met, and that worried me a little bit because it wasn't familiar to me.
It wasn't what you'd prepared for as well, and you had relationships that you'd formed and you were looking forward to having that care, right?
Yeah, and it was midwife. I can't remember what it's called. You'll probably be able to tell me, but midwife shared care.
Yep.
Where you see different.
Midwifery group care, yeah. Midwifery
That's the one, midwifery group care. So there were maybe 5 midwives that I'd met over my time there, and when I got to the labour ward, not a single one of them was working. So I was put in a room. I wasn't allowed to have a bath. That was something I was quite keen on, the idea of being in water through labour. I did have a shower. The midwife that was assigned to me was somebody that I didn't know and didn't immediately kind of click with. It felt a bit weird.
Yep.
But I laboured, as well as I could. I spent a couple of hours in the shower, I think. And about 7 hours in, I wasn't getting any relief between my contractions. So I had lots and lots of lower back pain.
Yep.
And I now know that was because my baby was posterior.
Yeah.
Didn't know that at the time. Wasn't told that until much later when they were trying to pull him out with a ventouse vacuum, that he was posterior. So I feel like had I known that, there would have been positions that I could have got in to try and turn him. But instead I accepted an epidural at that point, kind of 7 hours in.
Yeah.
That did give me some relief. It was probably 3 a.m. by this point. So I'd gone from kind of 8 p.m. till 3 a.m, I think.
Yeah.
Labouring as well as I could. Had the epidural, and then, I didn't, at the time, I don't think I was totally clear on the cascade of intervention piece. So I thought that I could have the epidural, it would take away some of the pain, I'd get to fully dilated and I'd be able to push my baby out. And what happened was I did get to fully dilated, but because I didn't have the full sensations of labour, I didn't realise I was fully dilated. They were doing vaginal exams a lot, which were uncomfortable, and I was on my back.
Yeah,
and I had a catheter in,
and you had a posterior baby too on your back,
and I had a
which that baby turn. Even with an epidural, we want you on your left side with a peanut ball between your knees, and there
was none of that. Yeah, there was none of that. There was also a shift changeover. This always happens, right? There's a shift changeover at 8 a.m. I was told that they were going to let me push in 2 hours, and I was like, that's weird. Like, why would you? How do you know that I'll be ready to push in 2 hours, and why is that on a time frame? But that was what we did. But I was on my back the whole time, and when the epidural started wearing off, it kind of became clear that nothing had really changed. I pushed for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
On my back.
Yep.
And his head had started to come out. But it was clear that it wasn't quite in the right position, and that it just wasn't, he wasn't progressing properly. Then all of a sudden there's lots of people in the room and they're saying, we're going to prep you for theatre. And I said, no, I don't want a cesarean. I've been really clear that I don't want a cesarean. I want to have a vaginal birth. And so they said, right, we'll try with the ventouse vacuum. They tried 4 times with the vacuum. And on the 4th attempt, I remember the doctor saying, I'm going to pull his head off. I can't, it's not coming out. So this might shock some people, but they pushed his head back in to then get me ready for surgery.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden it was an emergency, and I was rushed down the corridor, and they were cutting my son out. And at the time I was they topped up the epidural, so I was not really with it. I was exhausted, and I genuinely thought that they were just doing what was best. for me and my baby because I didn't know any different. I thought this is something that, I couldn't have changed, and, maybe this just wasn't meant to be a vaginal birth. I had a massive postpartum hemorrhage. And then Harrison was on my chest for 10 minutes, and then they took him away to the NICU. So he had a little breathing issue. And I think that was because they'd kind of taken him out and he was still full of fluid, and he didn't get kind of chance to push through push through my vagina to get all of that nice fluid out. And he had a big ring on his head.
Yeah.
From where they tried to pull him out with the vacuum. So that was all pretty horrendous because, I've just become a mother, and then all of a sudden my baby's not with me.
Yeah.
And I was pumped full of so many drugs that I kind of remember rambling as they were taking me into recovery, but just kind of saying, like, where's my baby? Where is he? I need to hold him. Where is he? I need to breastfeed him. And the midwife who was kind of there cleaning me up was trying to get colostrum. And the whole thing was just very odd and, really not the best introduction to motherhood. So I then got put on a ward, and Harrison was in the NICU for 4 days.
Wow.
And during those 4 days, I was only allowed to see him every 8 hours.
What?
Yeah, well, look, this is awful, right? Because it meant that it took a very long time to establish breastfeeding, because even though I was feeding him every time I went to see him, it wasn't enough.
No.
And they formula fed him from the second he got there, which was not what I'd wanted.
No.
But it was almost like I wasn't given that choice.
How much blood did you lose, darling? Do you know?
Nearly 2 litres.
Yeah, wow. So about half your body quotient, yeah. It's pretty significant. Did you have to have a transfusion or?
No, they gave me iron. They gave me an iron infusion, but I didn't need a blood transfusion.
It takes a long time, not just to recover from that birth experience, from that blood loss. There's so much that your body went through.
Yeah, it was a lot. I remember I think it was maybe day 2, the doctor came in and he did a birth debrief.
Wow.
And then
did you ask him to? Did he ask if?
No. He just came in and he just went, right, I'm coming to do a birth debrief. This is what happened. This is what happened with Von Twos.
Wow.
You had this much blood loss. This is how we got the baby out. Apgars were dropping. That's why he's going in the NICU. Blah blah. It was just very kind of fact based. And then he was like, "Have you got any questions?" And I was exhausted. I was still on a lot of painkillers. I didn't have my baby with me. Like, I was in another state.
Yeah, totally. That wasn't really a birth debrief. For anybody who's listening, that wasn't a birth debrief. That was just them projecting onto you the facts as they saw them.
Yes, yeah, exactly that. I found that, like, all of the midwives that I had during that time in hospital as well, like postpartum, they were all very, what's the word? Kind of gruff, They were like, "Oh, you're fine, just get on with it." In the way that your parents were in the 80s when you fell over and scraped your shins, they're like, "Oh, your leg's not falling off, you're fine." It's like, right, get up, you've had a cesarean, but you need to get up and move around, you need to be expressing milk every 2 hours. And it just didn't seem very caring. It just really, felt like I was an inconvenience to them. And every time I asked to see Harrison, they would be like, "Yeah, we'll get a porter." And then it'd be another hour before a porter came to wheel me down. And at that point, I still couldn't get there myself. It was on a different floor of the hospital.
Wow.
So that was quite bad. At one point, I remember going into the NICU to see him. I think it was on day 2, and they made me go away because they thought I was going to faint. And they were like, "We don't deal with sick adults here, only sick babies."
Goodness.
But it was just
in your wheelchair and facilitating some like skin on skin.
Yeah. So look, and I did get some skin on skin, and as soon as I saw him, I'd we'd have skin on skin, and I'd put him on the boob, and he was great. But yeah, I mean, being separated from your baby for any period of time when you've just had a baby is awful.
Totally.
So and it's when you've just had a baby as well, like having a baby in the NICU and seeing other sick babies, and other premature babies and tiny babies and parents who you can see have been there for weeks, with tiny little ones. Like, it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. So at the end of day 4, they brought him to me, and I could have him in the room with me. And then they decided that I had preeclampsia post-birth.
Post-clamp,
yeah. So my blood pressure was high, and there were some other things going on that they couldn't really account for. They took me for an ultrasound of my liver and kidneys, and then they wanted me to wait another 24 hours to have an assessment by one of the doctors. And I decided that I just wanted to go home. So on the morning of day 5, I discharged myself, because I just knew at that point, waiting another 24 hours, in a place where I didn't feel like I could heal, where I was being told that I couldn't hold my baby constantly, because at that point I wasn't letting him go, and they're like, you've got to put him back in the crib next to you when he goes to sleep. And to me, that was bonkers. I was like, I'm not letting him out of my sight. I'm going to be holding him
for the rest of his life. No,
for the rest of his life, yes. So I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to get any better, or I'm not going to get better quickly, unless I go home. So I signed the form to say that I was being discharged against medical advice. Got funny looks from all the doctors that were like, well, basically we don't want to see you back in here, because then we've got a quota to fill of people not being readmitted. And I knew at that point that I wasn't going to get readmitted, and we went home.
Yep.
So yeah, day 5 in the afternoon we get home, and then it kind of hit me that I had a baby to look after, and I was determined to breastfeed him. Ended up mixed feeding him for nearly 6 months, because he'd been started on formula. Again, I didn't know then that the top up trap of like, you breastfeed them and then you give them formula, but then they're full from the formula, so your breasts don't produce as much milk. I didn't know any of that. Like, I just assumed, because I'd been breastfed and I knew that my mum had breastfed me and my 2 sisters, that I would have no issue with breastfeeding. And I found that quite challenging. But I mean, it has a happy ending. Harrison was breastfed until he was 19 months.
Well done, you. That's big.
Yeah. I think it was by 5 or 6 months, I was off the top. So it's
a big
it did work out. Yeah.
It's a lot of work, that building up your supply and keeping that skin.
It was massive, and I was pumping all the time, and I didn't get loads from the pump, and I tried different pumps, and I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And just felt defeated, and I had apps that were telling me that I wasn't feeding him enough, and that he wasn't feeding for long enough, and all those timer things. I was trying to project manage having a baby, basically.
Yeah.
And it was not conducive to positive mental health. So
yeah.
By the time I got pregnant with Rose, and this kind of coincided with, so Harrison was 14 months when I got pregnant with Rose.
Yep. Wow.
And I just knew that I wanted to do things differently second time round. And I think even at that point, still hadn't really processed a lot of the birth trauma from my first birth. Didn't really know that was unusual and potentially traumatic until I started going to my antenatal appointments for Rose, and the midwife, we'd moved house by this point, so it was different hospital, she said, oh yeah, that was a really awful birth. She said, that was a really awful birth experience. It doesn't usually happen like that.
And now for a quick break. At She Births, we believe that pregnancy, birth, and matrescence, the sacred postpartum, is an awesome rite of passage. Our free holistic pregnancy guide offers you 6 months of weekly support. Drop straight into your inbox, or within our free She Births app, you can get content that will nourish your body, mind, and soul. You can enjoy prenatal yoga videos, great recipes, birth affirmations, course discounts, and more. From me and my team, the creator of the world's only scientifically verified antenatal classes, it is our gift to you. Sign up today and receive the free holistic pregnancy guide at shebirths.com/PG. That's shebirths.com/PG.
How did that feel to hear that back, to hear someone say that?
Yeah, it wasn't great.
No.
It wasn't great. I think I'm somebody that, like, I'm very open to therapy and have had therapy a lot over the last kind of 8-9 years. And mental health is something that's really important to me. And I think at that point, I still was just going with the narrative that, that society tells you, that my parents had told me that, every man and his dog tells you that, oh, at least you've got a healthy baby. But you've got a healthy baby. So there's, just don't worry about it.
Yeah, just get on with it.
Let's get on with it.
Suck it up, get on with it.
Yeah. So that's what I did. That was what I did. But I did go into my second pregnancy feeling, much more determined to have my voice and to do it in the way that I wanted. And it wasn't just the birth. It was like throughout the pregnancy with Harrison, I was kind of coerced into doing things I didn't want to do. And am I okay to say what those things were? Is that
absolutely? I think we will put a little trigger warning on this story because, it was intense. But you are most happy if you feel coerced or.
Look, it was
anyway. It's your experience. We're talking about it all the time at the Birth Trauma Parliamentary Inquiry. Coercion and grooming is coming up continually.
I just think it's massive, and it's something that you don't know when you go into pregnancy because you go in trusting the system, right? We grow up being told that medics know more than we do about our health, and we trust that they are there for our best interests. And I'm sure, like most people that work in the system are, but they are working for a system. So when you get to certain points in your pregnancy and they say, right, you have a scan at this point, like you go, okay, cool, I'll have a scan because that's obviously the best thing for me. And then they say, right, here's the whooping cough vaccine and the flu vaccine, and you go, wait a minute, why do I need that? Can you show me the evidence that my unborn baby is going to be protected from whooping cough if I have this vaccine? But you don't think that at the time. You go into an appointment and they've got the needles there and they're shoving them in your arm before you get a chance to ask the question. And then they tell you that you've got to do the glucose tolerance test. And you say, but nobody in my family has ever had diabetes and no women in my family have ever had gestational diabetes and I'm a healthy weight and I don't meet any of the risk criteria. And they say, well, you have to do it. So you do it, and then you feel disgustingly sick because it's a huge amount of sugar to put into your system in one go. And then you have to lie down, in a bloody hospital corridor for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Waiting for them to tell you that you're okay and you can go home and you don't have gestational diabetes, which you already knew.
Yeah. Or because the parameters of risk have changed and so many more women now are being told that they do have diabetes, the measurements or the numbers have changed, and that's why we're seeing, one of the massive contributing factors to the increase in induction rates. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So
yeah, you're right.
I wasn't happy with the whole, being vaccinated, pretty much against my will, but before I even knew it was against my will. So by the time I was pregnant with Rose, I just said, look, it's not a conversation I'm willing to have again, but I'm not having any vaccines in pregnancy. And thankfully, the midwife was respectful of that.
Yeah.
And I was a bit nervous because the midwives at my previous hospital were not respectful at all. It was well, you're doing this and don't question it.
There was no conversation, no explanation, no providing of evidence. Take this home, have a little think about it. You might also want to look at this website. No.
Yeah. No, there was none of that. It was like you go into the appointment and the needles are there lined up and they're in your arm before you even know it. So I knew that going into, Rose's pregnancy that things were going to be different.
Yeah.
So in lots of ways I did advocate for myself there. I also declined, and I did this with Harrison, I declined the Hep B vaccine at birth. And again, it's something that, I got a lot of stick for in my first birth. But by the second one, I just said, look, it's something that I've done research on and that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I prefer not to discuss it.
Yeah.
So, it's just something that it's a no. So please, I'll sign the form to say I've declined it. But just to make sure that happens. I was really upset in Harrison's birth that they cut the cord straight away because I really wanted, the cord to have stayed there for at least 5 minutes, if not more. I was told that was just not an option.
Yeah.
And so I'd really wanted that for Rose's birth. That was on my birth preference that my midwife knew about. And I'll kind of talk about how that transpired in a little bit. But I did feel like I was more informed going into Rose's birth. But we were in another lockdown at this point.
Yeah.
So there was still a lot of fear in the system. Everybody was wearing masks. The more pregnant I got, the more uncomfortable I got wearing a mask, and I stopped wearing one and got in trouble for that. And still to this day find it bizarre that they can think that it's safe for a woman at 38 weeks pregnant to, walk up 2 flights of stairs with a mask on and think that that's a healthy way to be. But
to oxygenate your body.
Yeah. As you're trying, as you're carrying a whole other human being inside it. But yeah, it was a completely different experience. I had the same midwife all the way through.
Nice, that's good.
That helped. And actually, even though my second birth again probably wasn't exactly what I wanted, I feel like the care that I received at Hornsby was really wonderful. And it was in some ways a healing experience compared to my first.
Yeah.
And I think I was going in expecting the worst as well from my first experience. But all the way through, my midwife was respectful of my choices. I could tell that she didn't agree with me, but she didn't push me, which was great. I then had a scan at 36 weeks, and I can't remember why I had a scan at 36 weeks. Oh, I remember now, because when you are a candidate for a VBAC, they tell you that you have to have a scan to measure your scar thickness. And then they will decide, based on that thickness, whether they think that it's too risky or not.
Is that because they were so close to, how many, you were past the 18-month mark, weren't you?
I was past 18 months. There's 22 months between Harrison and Rose.
Yeah.
But that was still, I think that was just their hospital policy.
Yeah.
That at that stage of the pregnancy, you have, you measure the scar thickness. That was when I found out that she was breech. Which I kind of knew because it felt very different to being pregnant with Harrison. Like I was getting kicked in the bladder rather than kicked in the ribs.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I could feel that. But once they found out that she was breech, that was when, we'll just get the obstetrician to come into this appointment. And we're just going to talk through the risks again. When we said that you've got maybe a 70% chance of having a vaginal birth, now we think it's about a 50% chance. And it was a kind of slow drip of eroding my confidence.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And again, I don't blame the midwife or the obstetrician, or the people that were caring for me at all, because that's the system that they work in and that's what they're taught, and I understand that if you work in an environment where some babies don't survive and some mothers don't survive, that, that risk is going to be at the forefront of your mind. And of course, you never want anything to happen to babies or mums in childbirth. So this isn't me having a go at those people, but I probably wasn't feeling as strong as I thought I was at that point. And
no, not meant to be feeling strong at that point. You're meant to be surrendering and yielding into the arms of softness and care and letting go and beginning the opening and moving more and more into the liminal space, aren't you?
Yeah, and the other thing is that I was still working at that point, as I'm sure lots of mums are. I worked up to 38 weeks with both of them.
Wow.
I was working from home, which was a godsend really, because I didn't really want to be getting the train into the city and walking to lots of meetings at that point. But I agreed to a planned cesarean. I think when she was 38 weeks, I signed the form for that.
Yeah.
And we were booked in for 39 plus 5. I got a call a few days after I'd booked in, and they said, "Oh, we've got an opening for 4 days before, and actually we'd feel more comfortable doing it then." And I think they don't want you to go into labour if you're a planned Caesar. So she was born 39 weeks and 1 day by planned cesarean. It was a really calm experience. I felt like I had in some way surrendered to the fact that was happening. I knew that she was fully cooked. I'd started to get what I thought was kind of pre-labour. I wouldn't say full contractions, but every 30 minutes or so that morning. And in hindsight, what I didn't know was that I could have cancelled that cesarean. Nobody tells you that you can do that.
Yeah, right.
So I could have cancelled it, even probably on the day, and said, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this my way, but I didn't. And she was born perfectly healthy, 3.17 kilos. She was given to me pretty much straight away, and latched onto the boob straight away. She was still feeding as they were cleaning me up, and I didn't let go of her for the whole 48 hours we were in hospital. I was home 48 hours later.
Wow, awesome. And did she come out head down? She turned, right?
Yeah, so she had turned. She had turned.
Yeah.
So she was cephalic when she came out. And again, had I known this prior, I thought I felt her turning, but then there's always the risk that she could still turn again. I don't know. But she was perfect.
Just so people who are listening realize, it is recommended to have another scan, as late as possible. If the diagnosed breech, particularly I don't know, I wish I'd been your doula, because I would have been like, so what are you feeling? What are you connecting to? You would have had somebody to talk that through with, I had this weird feeling you turned. And then I might have encouraged you to maybe go and have an ultrasound. Or
do you know what I did? I knew that she'd turned, and I could feel that her head was down. And it was I still believed that that a cesarean was the safest thing. It was that's what I'd been told.
Yeah.
And I think had I processed maybe Harrison's birth in a better way, and bear in mind, this is the second lockdown. We're nearly 2 years into COVID by this point. I've basically spent 2 years at home. Nobody's gone out anywhere. Everything was online.
Yeah.
It was a weird time.
Yeah.
um, it was a very kind of strange time to have two babies. And at my 38-week appointment with my midwife, after we'd signed all the cesarean forms, she went, "Oh, well, it's probably good that you're doing this because I'm going on holiday next week for 3 weeks."
Oh, wow.
Oh, great. So I wouldn't have had you at my birth anyway.
Wow.
Which, I mean, that's just the way it is. But I felt a little bit like the rug had been pulled under from me, a little bit. And then I was kind of like, is this just more convenient for the hospital? Mm-hmm. It probably is, isn't it? to have me booked in. But look, that being said, compared to the first experience where it was an emergency, I'd been pumped full of everything and, I was exhausted and scared, I didn't feel any of that. Yeah. Andrew was with me. The anaesthetist was funny. They were talking to me the whole way through. I got to hold her straight away, like all of those things. They told me after they'd taken the placenta out, and I wish I'd got a picture of this, that she'd had a velamentous cord insertion.
All right. Do you want to explain what that is?
So that means that instead of the cord going directly into the middle of the placenta, which is what it usually does, and then the baby takes all the nutrients from there, the cord was attached just by one membrane on the outside of the placenta. And that then could come off in labour.
Yeah.
And it can also lead to lower birth weights because the baby hasn't always got enough nutrients through the cord. It turns out she didn't have a low birth weight. She had a completely normal birth weight. But I just wonder, I was terrified of going into labour and then having another emergency cesarean. So having it planned and then finding that out and then having her latch so well and, us being well enough to go home so soon, did feel like it was, it was a little bit healing. Especially because I went home so quickly because I had my nearly 2-year-old at home who couldn't come and visit in the hospital because you were only allowed one visitor and they weren't allowing children in. And I'd never been away from him for that long.
It's huge.
It hurt me to be away from him.
Yeah.
For that time. I remember when they put me in the room, in the maternity ward, I got in trouble because I took my cannula out.
Oh. You just decided to become a nurse.
It was annoying. It was annoying, the hand, and I was like, I'm not. She was like, but what if you need any extra fluid? What if you need? I was like, I don't. I'm fine.
You're good. I'm good.
I was like, I'm good. I'm fine. I'll be going home tomorrow. So yeah, I got in trouble for taking that out, but I was just like, I felt so much better than I was expecting to feel because I wasn't completely traumatized.
Yeah, and you had more voice, like you said, like, each experience we go through is, if we really, you might not fully heal it, but if you allow yourself to feel some of it and to reflect and contemplate on some of it, the wisdom comes through, and then the agency comes from that, and then the having a voice is the expression of that.
Yeah.
Which you were doing. You did it.
Yeah, and it was a healing experience, and I'm glad that I did it that way. In hindsight, like, absolutely would have preferred a vaginal birth, but if I was going to have a cesarean, that was the best way for me to have one.
Yeah.
So we came home after 2 days, and little Rose now, she's just turned 2. So she's full on toddler now.
Beautiful.
And breastfed her exclusively and breastfed her for 17 months. So I'm a little bit nervous with this one because I have weaned both of mine when I've been pregnant, and I've just got like over them touching me.
Yeah.
So this one might be breastfed until she's 5 or 6 at this rate. So,
No problem.
who knows? Who knows? So then we were pretty certain that our family was complete after Rose. So we had, 2 older ones and 2 younger ones. And that felt like it was nice, just started to get my groove back. I started a business when Rose was 1.
Wow.
So decided not to go back to work and start my own recruitment business. So I was just getting into the groove with that. I just signed up my first few clients, got my first few jobs on. Was starting to, I'd been back in the gym for a few months. I was weightlifting, starting to feel strong. And then one morning I went downstairs and I had a cup of tea and it just tasted weird. I was like, I'm pregnant. I knew. Just like, my tea started tasting metallic. I was like, definitely pregnant. It was more than a week. I think it was like 8 days before my period was due.
Yeah.
But I did one of those early tests anyway, and it immediately came up with 2 lies.
Wow. You know when it happened. I mean, you know the moment because,
I know exactly when it happened.
When you've got a couple of toddlers running around.
Yeah, exactly. And hilariously, it was the day before my husband had his second vasectomy.
Too funny.
This little girl really, really wanted to be here.
Yeah.
She's got big plans.
Yeah. I love it. Go Ruby. We want to see what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So things that I changed the third time around. So this time I feel like, the first 2 births were preparation for my third, and having got over the shock of going to be a mum of 3 under 4, when I was really sure that our family was complete and, I'd got rid of all the baby stuff and given the cot away and
oh, wow.
the table, the bounce, all of it was gone. The first thing that I knew I wanted was midwifery continuity of care.
Yeah.
So I tried to get a private midwife with Rose. That didn't happen because they were all fully booked. I was, I think, 4 or 5 weeks pregnant when I started calling around private midwives.
Yep.
And I really connected with this beautiful woman on the Northern Beaches. She's called Janine O'Brien. And we had a really good chat on the phone. And I booked a meeting to go and see her. And she was really excited by the idea that I wanted to have a vaginal birth after 2 cesareans. She's been a midwife for over 20 years. She has had a vaginal birth after a cesarean.
Yeah.
She's had a home birth after cesarean. And I said, look, this is what I want. I want a vaginal birth. I want a home birth. I want you to look after me. And I don't want to be in the hospital system at all.
Yeah.
And I just really wished that I'd known that private midwives were available. Look, to be honest, with Harrison, I wouldn't have been able to afford a private midwife.
Yeah.
But with, she made such a difference to how I felt throughout the pregnancy and going into birth and all the way through my labour and birth and, and postpartum, that I feel like every woman needs to have continuity of care.
Yep. I know. It's like you can't even like put a monetary value really on it because it's so priceless, particularly when you compare it to the free experience, Yeah. Yeah. And look, and, I didn't have a horrible experience at Hornsby. Yeah.
But it still wasn't totally ideal. And I still had to advocate for myself at every appointment.
Yeah.
When I told them that I didn't want any vaccines in pregnancy, every single appointment they told me that if I got COVID whilst I was pregnant, I was going to die and my baby was going to die. I was like, that's not helpful.
It's certainly not evidence-based in any regard whatsoever. Yeah.
No. So I knew that I didn't want to go through that again. So Janine and I sat down and talked about who I was as a person and how I live my life and how I've raised my other two and my, thoughts on breastfeeding and nutrition and mental health and, just how we live.
Yeah.
And that was great. So I didn't ever feel like I had to repeat myself with her.
Yeah.
And the more appointments I had, the more we got to know each other, and it was just really comfortable.
Yeah.
Which was great. The care with a private midwife is the same, or for me, it was far superior to the care with hospital midwives. And she still does all of the things that they do in the hospital. I still went for blood tests, and we talked about iron and zinc and how I could balance my nutrients out, and when I needed towards the end I needed a little bit of help with iron, and I still had a 13-week scan, and I had a 20-week scan, and I chose not to have any more after that. Interestingly, in my 20-week scan, I was told that the baby had a cleft palate. And the sonographer was really quite certain that the baby had a cleft palate and recommended that I had a follow-up scan in 4 weeks to confirm that. And I spoke to Janine about it, and she said, do you want to get a second opinion on that rather than just going back to the same place? And I said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So she got me into Royal North Shore, to the fetal medicine unit there to have a scan. And the sonographer there, who also brought in the obstetrician to have a look, said, look, I can't see anything. She said, that doesn't mean that there isn't one there, but it's something that I can't detect. And it's something that I wouldn't necessarily be looking for, but wouldn't have said that's going to be an issue. She said it's actually very difficult to see the soft palate of a baby at 20 weeks or 24 weeks gestation. So I was then offered another follow-up scan, which I booked for another 8 weeks, but in the back of my mind probably knew I was going to cancel, because I didn't want to spend the next 2 months worrying about something that I couldn't change.
Yeah.
And especially having had conflicting opinions from two different sonographers, I kind of just, resigned myself to, if she's got a cleft palate, then we'll deal with that when she's born.
Yep.
And if she hasn't. But I didn't want to spend the rest of my pregnancy stressing about something that might be wrong with my baby.
Yeah. I mean, this is the great risk with scans and the great sort of challenge that we now have with maternal fetal medicine is the continuous false positives and the weighing up that we need to do. And there's even been studies on this, the weighing up of how much anxiety that it brings into the mother and partner scenario versus so many things that are picked up either are false positives or they actually self-correct, because, human beings don't grow according to a specific graph in all of their organs and their heart valves. And sure, great things are picked up on ultrasound and, but at the same time, we do need to weigh these things up around how much anxiety they also bring into our home.
Totally. And I think that, I had more scans when I was pregnant with Harrison. I remember them telling me towards the end, oh, you've got a really big baby. He's in the 98th percentile.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard for you to, vaginally birth a head that big. So that's not what you want to hear.
No. And how do they know? We don't know. We don't know. Like we had someone last week just birth a 4.7 kilo baby, like 40-hour labour. She did it. She was great. Like it's just, how do they know, what's going to be big or hard or not? Or for we don't know how much the baby's head's going to squish. We don't know how much your pelvis is going to give. We don't know anything. The collagen, the elasticity, the softness of your pelvic floor. Like F off, really. Yeah. Stop with the projections.
So that scan at maternal fetal medicine, I think it was like 23 or 24 weeks. That was the last scan that I had. We went to the UK over Christmas, and I called them. My scan was due kind of mid-January when we got back. So the day we got back, I'd called and left a voicemail and emailed them and said, thanks, but I'm going to cancel this appointment. I then got in trouble for that.
What do you mean?
The receptionist was quite upset with me. Oh, well, do you not care about the health of your baby?
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Yes, I do. But having another scan to tell me whether or not she's got a cleft palate is not going to change anything right now.
No.
It's not something that we can do anything about.
It's ridiculous.
So, especially because it was, at that point, if I was going to go, one person had said yes, one person had said no, it's 50-50 chance that that there was anything wrong. But turns out she's got a perfect mouth and has no issues at all, which is great. So didn't have any further scans, but was having regular appointments with Janine. From 37 weeks, she came to the appointments at my house, which was lovely. So I was going to her house prior to that. I'd taken Harrison and Rose with me a few times.
Cute.
So they knew her.
Yeah.
Janine lent me a book called Hello Baby, which is a storybook about a mum having a home birth as told by a little boy.
Yeah.
Who has brothers and sisters who have seen him be born.
Yeah.
And his first experience of birth, and it's got pictures in it of the mum labouring and then the baby coming out. And so I've read that hundreds of times to both of them, so they knew what was what was going to happen. Harrison was very excited about the prospect of him being the one to cut the cord with the special strong scissors.
Wow, classic
boy. He's like, Mom, can I use the special strong scissors? And he kept saying to me, Mum, why is the baby going to come out of your bottom?
Cute.
It's very cute. Very cute. So, I was preparing the kids. I felt like this was going to be it. I was going to have my home birth. I did loads of research in this pregnancy. So I joined the VBAC Australia Facebook group and read every single story of people who would have vaginal births after cesareans, especially people who had vaginal births after 2 cesareans.
Yeah, which is very rare. It's very rare.
Yeah, I didn't kind of realise this at the time because Janine just made it sound like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Of course you can do that. It was only when I had the baby, she went, do you realise what you've just done?
Hilarious.
And how epic that is.
Yeah, we've only had, I think, 3 mums have a VBA 2C.
Really?
I can think of off the top of my head, that I can think of. Because the risk factors for uterine rupture, they do really only increase after the 3rd cesarean.
Right.
But that's not the way the system rolls, and that's not the way anxiety and fear plays out in our own psyches. And
I get that. And look, I think, like, for me, I wanted to be really well educated going into this birth, and I knew that the risk of rupture was around something like 1.3%.
Yeah,
which goes up from, I don't know, like 0.8 or 0.9%.
Yeah.
But then you think, okay, I've got more than a 98% chance of having a vaginal birth with no uterine rupture.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take those odds. Look, considering all 3 of my children were conceived after my husband's had a vasectomy, I think...
Miracle babies, sorry, not vasectomy babies.
I'll take my miracle babies. But, I'll take those odds.
Hilarious.
So we got preparing for the home birth. I read everything I could. I bought Hazel Keedle's book, Birth After Cesarean.
Yeah.
And I bought it on my Kindle and I read it 3 times.
Good girl, well done.
At various stages through my pregnancy. So I think I read it around 6 months, and then I read it at 8 months, and then I read it just before I had her as well. I watched the birth time documentary.
Yeah.
I actually ended up buying that twice and
Classic.
watching that separate times because I just loved it so much. My Instagram account all of a sudden was just filled with VBAC stories, and I followed accounts. I followed the Birth Ed account, who they're based in the UK, and she posts amazing photos of babies being born. Every time Andrew looked over my shoulder, he was like, "Is that all you look at now? Women giving birth?" I'm like, "Yep."
You were in the echo chamber happily.
I was like, this is happening.
Because you kind of, doing that psychological but also emotional work and that confidence building and that wiring up. Think of all the times we've heard that you can't do it, it's not possible, feeling just general negativity that was around, like you say, like in the COVID times, so much negativity and fear, consciousness in general. And that feeds into all of our thoughts, all of our, whether we're optimistic or pessimistic, So you have to work at it to build those muscles and pathways.
Yeah, you really do. And I surrounded myself with positive literature and positive people. I'm still in touch with a number of the women that I met through the Soul Mama Circle.
Beautiful.
A few of those have had home births. So, I spoke to them about their home birth stories. They shared their photos. It was just really wonderful. I called my friend Tessa Tran, who you know. So she was in our Soul Mama Circle. Our sons are the same age. I think their birthdays are a couple of days apart. And she's got a daughter who's 3 months young or 2 months younger than Rose.
Yes, yeah.
We kind of stayed in touch over WhatsApp, not really met up for a long time, but stayed in touch. And I knew she was a photographer and I wanted somebody to document the birth. And I remember her telling me she used to do birth photography before she had children.
Yeah.
Asked if she would come out of retirement on the birth photography for me. So that was lovely. So I was in touch with Tessa. She was coming to document the birth. She'd had home births.
Yeah.
So I just felt like I was surrounded by women who believed that I could do it, and were only sharing in my excitement and positivity. I didn't talk to people who weren't.
Good.
I found that, people ask you, when they see you're pregnant and you're in a coffee shop or whatever, and they'll ask you where you're having the baby, and you say at home, and they go, "Oh, isn't that dangerous?" And I just had a standard line. I just always say to them, "Oh, well, I'm booked into the hospital in case anything happens."
Yeah.
I just didn't engage in those kind of conversations because I didn't want to have that, any of those negative thoughts. But I also had spent a lot of time talking through with Janine scenarios where we might have to go to hospital.
Yeah. Yep.
And what would happen if, and what would be my wishes if certain things happened.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that was that I implicitly trust her, so if she was going to say to me in labour, "I think we should go," then we'd go. I'm lucky enough to live like less than a 10-minute drive away from the hospital.
Yeah.
So we knew that, we could be there quickly if needed.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling terrible about that because I hadn't had a terrible experience there. I think had it been the other hospital where I'd had my first, that might have brought up some more fears. Also, at the beginning of this pregnancy, I was seeing a psychologist, so I'd talked through a lot of my initial fears with the psychologist and was feeling kind of a lot freer. Especially towards the end of the pregnancy. So I got to. It's funny. I was saying to the midwife, so at this point I've got 4 children and I'm pregnant, and the teenagers live with us 1 week on and then 1 week with their mum. And so I was joking to Janine. I said, "Look, I'm either going to give birth to this baby in week 39 or week 41 because those are weeks where the teenagers are at their mums."
Hilarious.
And I'll have 2 less children to have to think about.
Yeah.
Especially because the 17-year-old, which he's fair. 17-year-old boy was like, I don't want anything to do with the home birth. That sounds revolting.
Classic.
It's like, yeah, look, fair. You probably don't want to see your stepmom giving birth. That's cool.
Totally.
Yeah, so
naked around the house. No, understandable.
No, so, I said, look, it's either going to be week 39 or week 41. And then I said, it's probably going to be on the full moon, so it's probably going to be week 39. I said, my first, was 39 plus 2. So, I don't know if there's any real, link between gestation periods in the same woman, but I was like, so I'm going to be week 39 or week 41. I spent the last month cooking so much food that we're still living off that. Like 3 weeks later, we've still got a freezer full of delicious meals. I put fairy lights up in the living room, in the dining room. I had my birth affirmation cards. I'd got little tea lights in tea light holders.
Yeah.
All around the house, and I was ready. I did the manic cleaning thing where I decided the day before I went into labour I really wanted to clean the skirting boards.
Wow.
And then I was like, I didn't clean the skirting boards because it's a massive house and that would have stressed me out. And who wants to do that when they're just about to give birth? But then I kind of knew that I was going to go into labour soon.
You knew the nesting urge and
Yeah. It was like next level nesting. I was like, I'm going to clean the insides of the cupboards.
Yeah.
Who does that? Only a very
I have a theory, it's part of obviously preparing the nest like an animal would do, to prepare, how beautiful is a bird's nest? Or I've got mice at the moment in my lawnmower, and the nest is just so perfect, for them to lay their eggs, and that's the nesting. But also when we do those boring and repetitive actions, apparently boring, the back brain takes over, the frontal lobe shuts down in a way, and this sort of processing starts to happen, this sort of self-reflective autobiographical processing, just like when you go for a walk. It's like you can start to reflect upon, where have I been, where am I at, what's coming next. So there's this clarification that comes in terms of how we see ourselves and where we're at in our world. And I think this is identity shifting and labour preparing, all these kinds of processes.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my theory anyway.
I'd even got my living room, we've had the same cushions for years, and I hated the cushions, and some of them were falling apart, and the polyester filling was all lumpy. I was like, I'm a grown up, I can buy myself new cushions.
Hilarious.
So I did an interior design redecoration on our living room.
Good.
But it was, it's a beautiful space. A friend of mine gave me a rocking chair, for feeding in, and I've got a lovely blanket to go on that. And I was just feeling really kind of calm and ready. And just totally open to, it happening when it was going to happen. The day that I went into labour, I had an appointment. So Janine had come to the house at midday. I started to get contractions at about 1 a.m. It was a Tuesday. And they weren't particularly strong, and they were about every half an hour. So I was sleeping in between them. But by 6 a.m, I was like, it's kind of getting a bit uncomfortable now. But I went on with my day, and I really thought that they were going to fizzle out in the day. I thought, I'm going to get busy with doing things, I'll be with the kids, and it won't.
How many weeks were you now? Were you 39? Where were you at? 39?
I was 39 plus 3.
Yep.
Yeah. So 39 and a half. And I went, but it still could. I think I'd mentally prepared myself for going to 42 weeks. Just because I wanted to mentally prepare myself for that. Knowing that I wasn't going to be overdue until anything up to that point. And I'd read a lot about, labour stopping and starting, especially when you've got other kids, and sometimes you can feel it in the night and then it stops during the day, and that might happen for a few days. So I really felt like I'd read about 400 different scenarios that could happen in labour. And and, of course, you don't know what's going to happen until it does. But by the appointment at midday, the contractions were every 10 minutes. And, Janine was checking my pulse and my blood pressure. She was like, yeah, you're definitely working. Something's happening.
Awesome.
And she was like, I'll come back at dinner time. I was like, oh, no, you're fine. You just go home. She's like, she lives about an hour away from me. She said, I'm not driving home for you to call me as soon as I get home and tell me to come back.
Yeah.
So she came back around 6 p.m. and she was right. They were about every 5 minutes by then.
Awesome. Wow.
So that was pretty cool. The kids were pretty interested in what was going on by this point. I was using the big Pilates ball, or I was just kind of leaning on the footstool in the living room, making quite a lot of noise. They took 2 hours to go to bed that night.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So poor Andrew was upstairs with both of them, and I could hear them running up and down and just being feral. It was the full moon as well. So yeah, that probably had something to do with it. But they finally went down around 9 o'clock, and then contractions really ramped up after that.
Yep.
So I was still feeling really good, though. I was feeling calm. I was surrounded by, I had my husband there, I had Tessa there, I had Janine there. It was like all of these people know me and love me, and it was just lovely. And like in between contractions, we were making jokes, and it was, it just felt great. It was, the pain was manageable. It was getting more intense, but it was like I had a muscle memory for it as well. I knew it was okay, and that this was just my body working to, open me up to have a beautiful birth. So it was all feeling really good. I started to use a TENS machine around, 10 or 11 p.m. I kind of get a bit hazy on the times. Because, it's like, you're like in another world, aren't you, when you're in labour? And at first, the TENS machine, I really didn't like it. But then I kind of got the whole referred pain thing that, that did help a little bit.
And now for a quick break. Contrary to popular culture, She Births believes that childbirth can be the best day of your life. It is designed perfectly to be empowering, enriching, and bonding. An awesome rite of passage. Our childbirth education programs have helped thousands of families around the world since 2008, allowing families to not only feel empowered through education, but also connect with their innate birthing wisdom to create the best birth possible and begin their parenting journey with confidence. She Birth's unique methodology was scrutinised in university trials and has been published in the British Medical Journal for improving birth outcomes for both mother and child. I'd like to invite you to begin preparing for birth today. Just go to shebirths.com to discover our 2-day weekend face-to-face courses or access the online courses from anywhere around the world. That's shebirths.com. Create your beautiful birth with the world's only scientifically verified antenatal classes.
How are you feeling going through all of that?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean,
It's huge.
it's exciting though. I mean, I feel like this was the most incredible birth that I've had, and I almost didn't believe it was possible. Even through all of the preparation and planning that I'd done. It's like I couldn't believe it was happening.
Yeah. Yep. So should we, I think that's, very beautiful, and it makes total sense. It's such a big leap. It just shows you how psychologically we need to do so much preparation, but then it is still such a huge leap to get that, for the embedding of it, for the landing, the embodiment of it. It's huge.
It is. And I just think, I'm so glad that I went through, getting a private midwife, and that I did all of that research, because I just know, had I gone through the VBAC clinic in the hospital, I actually don't think they'd have let me. I think their policy does not allow VBACs after 2 cesareans. They'll only allow you to try after 1. So I would have had to go to a different hospital. I would have had to fight for what I wanted. But yeah, I mean, I remember, laughing and joking like midway through my labour, and just being so relaxed and so happy that I was at home.
Yeah.
After a few hours, I got in the pool and spent a couple of hours in the pool, and then it was getting super intense. Janine suggested that I sit on, she called it a birth stool. It's like
a cub thing there.
You sit on.
Yeah.
And that was just like way too strong for me.
Yeah.
So,
more intense. Yeah.
Super intense. And then around 1:30 in the morning, she offered a vaginal exam, and I hadn't had any up to this point. And so I agreed. I was kind of curious, and she didn't tell me how many centimetres I was, and that was the right thing to do. And she said, "Yep, you're you're beautifully getting ready to birth this baby. Everything is as it should be." And she was super vague about it, right? And
yep,
that was fine
because your waters hadn't gone yet, had they? No.
So just to go back to Harrison, my waters broke before I went into labour. My mucus plug came out 4 or 5 days before I went into labour.
Yeah.
With Harrison. With Rose, it was a planned cesarean, so it didn't have waters break or anything. With this one, I had nothing. I had no mucus plug, I had no bloody show, I had no waters. Still like hours and hours into labour, I've got nothing. I was like, is this weird? And she was like, no, sometimes it happens towards the end. It's all normal, basically. So, I was there in the pool, and she was like, oh, this pool is very clean.
Yes.
Yeah, which is great. But yeah, so after I'd had that vaginal exam, and then the contractions were getting really, really strong at this point. They were, I don't know, every couple of minutes. And I started to feel my scar in between the contractions. Like it felt like it was stretching. And something shifted in my brain, and I kind of panicked then.
Yeah.
Because in between the contractions, I could feel it like every time in between the contractions. And I thought, I've got to tell Janine that I can feel this. And I desperately don't want to have an emergency cesarean. And it was almost like all of that preparation that I'd done went out the window, and my brain just went into panic mode.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, look, this was maybe 2:30 at this point. She said, look, I've checked your heart rate. Your heart rate's good. Baby's heart rate is good, but we don't want that to change. And I recommend that for safety, we go into hospital, because I'm never going to mess with a woman who tells me they can feel their cesarean scar.
Yeah.
We're never going to wait to the last minute for that.
Yeah.
And as much as I didn't want to, I completely trusted her. And she said, look, we'll go in my car. It's going to be quicker than calling an ambulance.
Yeah.
And so I was kneeling on the seat.
Yeah.
Seat of the car.
Yeah.
It was like, I woke my neighbours up. One of my neighbours texted me, and she was like, you've got this. You can do it.
Aww.
Because I told all of my neighbours that I was having a home birth. I was like,
yeah.
don't Aww. So that was great. And on the drive to the hospital, I just remember thinking, it's like, get in the zone, you can do this. Because I knew that as soon as I went into the hospital and they saw me, they were going to try and prep me for theatre. And we got in there, and I didn't register anybody in the room, really. But the obstetrician was asking if she could put a cannula in, and I said no. And then she was like, well, can I do a vaginal exam? And I was in the middle of a contraction, just kind of screaming at that point. It's like, why would you ask me now?
Yep.
to wait until it passed. But I let her do a vaginal exam, and I heard her say, "You're fully dilated." And at that point, I just zoned everybody out, and I was on all fours on the bed, holding on to the plastic handrails on the, the guardrails on the side, and I pushed my baby out.
Woohoo! Woohoo! Everyone just like burst into tears. Like,
oh my god, I was in so much shock that as her head was coming out, my head was on her hand and my hand was shaking.
Yeah.
And she came out. So I remember Janine saying, "Oh, there's the bloody show," about a minute before her head came out. So bloody show came. Her head comes out. She's completely on call, so she's in the sack.
Yes. Oh,
and her whole head is out.
Baby. Of course she was born in the sack because she's a magic on magic baby.
You are, little magic baby, born on a full moon in her sack.
Oh my God.
It was just wild. And I could hear the hospital midwife, she was called Catherine, she was going, Hannah. And I was like, I can't answer you right now. And I was shrieking at this point, like really high pitched shrieking. And I think she was probably trying to tell me to breathe deeply and to like push that down rather than the kind of panic shrieking that I was doing. Janine was taking a video of me giving birth. My bum was shaking.
Oh yeah. That's
like all the adrenaline, all the feels, and like my hand was shaking on her head. And as soon as her head was out, I had this like reprieve where all of a sudden I kind of couldn't feel anything, and I was like, I'm in the middle of giving birth. This is amazing. And the next contraction, her body came out, and the waters broke, and then I had a baby in my arms. And I was just amazed that I'd done it. I think all the way through in the hospital, part of my brain was going, they're going to cut her out. You're going to have to go to surgery. They're going to, they're not going to listen to you. And they did. And they left me alone. And the hospital midwife was so respectful of all of my choices, and she didn't push me for anything. She didn't do anything that I didn't want. And it was magic. Aww. She asked me if I wanted a cannula after the birth so she could put Synto in to manage the placenta. And I was confused. I was like, why? She said, "Oh, that's just what we do." I was like, no. And I remember Tessa and Janine saying, like, just, if you just like do a tiny little push, the next time you have a contraction, the placenta will come out.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah.
And then we had the placenta in a little dish next to Ruby as she had her first feed, and had that attached to her for more than half an hour. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Which was wonderful. She did ask a couple of times if she could cut the cord. I was like, no, it's still pulsing. Like, nah, she's good.
Hilarious.
She's good. And so she was born at 3:10 in the morning. We arrived at hospital at 2:40. She was born at 3:10. She was, we had immediate skin on skin. She did the little crawl to the breast and latched on straight away. Then once she'd had a feed, they did, the newborn checks and weighed her, but they weren't rushing to do that, and that was really nice. I cut the cord after, it was more than 30 minutes of her being there, and then they made me a cup of tea and some toast, and I had a shower and came home.
Beautiful. So happy with your little baby. Yeah. So going back to that moment of her arriving and you looking down and meeting her, what was going on inside you when that happened?
I was just in awe. I was in complete shock and awe at what I'd just done. And it was like the most magical thing I have ever experienced. Especially because 5 minutes before I thought I was going to die. Because I was like, surely nobody can live through this pain. And then it's like, oh my God, I've now got a baby that I just pushed out of my vagina.
Yeah.
That most people thought I couldn't do. But when we arrived at the hospital, the obstetrician immediately had to go at my midwife, saying, why did you think she could have a home birth? It's not safe after 2 cesareans, and, you know, she's in the best place now. Let's prep her for theatre.
Wow. So Janine didn't have visiting rights at that hospital I'm at Hornsby, because she would have only had at Westmead. So she acted as your doula, really.
No, I think she does have visiting rights at Hornsby.
Oh, does she? That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was great. And look, and it was really lovely her working with Catherine, who was the hospital midwife.
Yeah, great.
Because, you know, obviously Janine had all of my notes. And so she was like, right, here's the notes. And, you know, this, you know, it was really seamless.
Yeah. So good to hear a home birth transfer story. Like, it's just such an important thing, because people before you're a doula or before you've had a home birth transfer, you think of that as a failure, but it's not a failure at all.
Not at all. And look, I was nervous about going into hospital. I didn't want to go into hospital. I'd said that was really going to be a last resort. Yeah. And even when when we got there, I was still scared that they were going to, that I was going to have another cesarean. But I was really proud of myself. I advocated for exactly what I wanted. Janine was there advocating for me as well. And it was just, honestly, it was magic. Catherine, the hospital midwife at Hornsby, she was British as well. She said, when you came in, I thought we were going to have, like everybody here, we'd get you into theatre, it was going to be a big deal. And she said, you came in, you said no to everything, you've had your baby, and now you sat chatting to me having a cup of tea.
Yeah.
She's like, I will never, ever forget this birth.
Yeah.
She said she'd never seen anybody have a vaginal birth after 2 cesareans.
Yeah.
In 10 years of hospital midwifery, she'd never seen that.
I'm just going to let that land. Just going to let that land. Yeah. Physiological labour, physiological birth, when we're in a culture of care and support and advocacy, we can achieve awe-inspiring, magical moments.
I had a vaginal birth with no medical intervention after 2 cesareans, having been told by the system that I couldn't birth vaginally.
Yeah. Yeah, and even being told when you arrived at the hospital. I mean, it is extraordinary. It's beautiful. And it just shows you how profoundly amazing our bodies are and our minds, and how important that preparation is, and how important that care and the culture that you surround yourself with is, right up to the moment. Yeah. Yeah. So impactful.
Yeah, and I feel like I was so well supported. I was so grateful that Janine was there. The only sadness about Ruby's birth was that my husband Andrew wasn't there. Because he had to stay at home with the other 2. So I forgot to mention that the other 2, Harrison and Rose, woke up at around 2:00, and they came downstairs, and they were just really curious. But I was making a lot of noise by then. Rose, who was nearly 2, was very concerned. She kept saying, "Mummy, you okay? Mummy, tummy hurts." And Tessa sat her on her knee and said, "It's okay, Rose. Mum's just having a baby." And then Rose was completely calm, and just, it's like she just accepted that I was having the baby, and she just sat and watched.
Beautiful.
It was really, really beautiful. But, sadly, Andrew couldn't come with the kids to the hospital. We toyed with the idea of Tessa staying with them, but I just knew that they wouldn't settle with her.
Yeah, right.
And I wanted them to go back to sleep and not feel distressed that neither of their parents were there.
Yeah. So
So
many babies to look after.
Yeah.
So many babies.
Yeah.
And how long do you feel like it's taken for you to kind of land? You know, like, because there's this shock, like we use this term in marketing, right? Shock and awe. You've experienced awe and shock, but then when does the meeting and the landing and the embodying kind of come? How does that happen?
So I was home 2.5 hours after I arrived at the hospital, maybe 3 hours after. It was before 6 a.m. that we got home. And I was still kind of on a high then. And I handed her to Andrew, and he'd stayed up, and he was, you know, we'd called him as soon as she was born on FaceTime, and you know, he'd stayed up, but I reckon it was more than a week of me being at home and just staring at this absolutely beautiful baby that I have birthed naturally, who is just a completely perfect little specimen.
Yeah, so cute.
You know? And just, it's like, you go through 9 months of wanting to meet your baby and not knowing what they look like, and, you know, just imagining who they're going to be. And then they're born, and it's like you can't remember a time before they were with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I just feel like, you know, I thought my family was complete before, but she's just such a little joy. And, you know, the other two are just so delighted to have a baby sister, and they want to kiss her and hold her. And Harrison, bless him, he's not even 4. He said to me yesterday, "Mummy, would you like me to hold baby Ruby so you can eat your breakfast?"
Oh, cute.
So maybe not, but thanks. Thanks, buddy.
Oh, it's so cute. Oh.
Yeah. So I think Tessa sent me the photos back about a week later, and seeing the photos of me in labour, and then the photos of her being born, and then her first breastfeed, and, you know, seeing her feeding with the placenta and the cord attached, like, it was just amazing. Like, I'm so glad that I did that.
Yeah.
And that I had it documented, and it in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, because that really helps with that wiring and firing and embodiment, embedding, like, and at the integration of the profundity. Like, it's a really profound experience. And I see women kind of, you know, you've been through it now 3 times, and in the Soul Mama Circle, we see women sort of forget or lose that connection to the birth and go through a bit of a grieving, you know. Sometimes there's grieving around the trauma, but then there can be grieving of feeling that loss of power and that loss of awe. And I think the photos are such an important part of that, and having our stories in places like this that are there forever. And and
I just feel like I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of my body, you know, of my baby. And I'm just so glad that I did all the research that I did, that I advocated for myself, and that it's almost like having that hospital birth was a way of, like, coming full circle and really healing all of it.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Yeah.
In a way that I was able to advocate for myself in a way that I wasn't the first time round.
Yeah, you got to complete the cycle, which is healing trauma, when we get to complete the cycle. And not everybody gets to do that, because we don't always have subsequent babies, and it doesn't always work out. So we have to do it in other sort of processes outside. But, you know, I'm so incredibly happy for you, and so, you know, inspired as well, you know. And I'm sure so many people will be as well. I feel like we should do it like, we'll see how maybe it should be a surprise podcast. Like, what is Hannah's birth going to be? Like the third. something like that. I don't know. But is there anything else you would like to share with the people, the families and the birth workers out there that are listening, the health practitioners?
I think, if you're working in the birth space, so the doulas and the midwives and, the practitioners that work with pregnant women, I just think keep supporting them and, believing in them. I think, having somebody who 100% believed in me and my ability to birth and my body's ability to birth, just really helped me to get into that mindset. It's that Winnie the Pooh quote, isn't it? That we're, stronger than we think and braver. I'm going to get it wrong.
I don't know that one. Tell me.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to look it up. But it's, you're basically smarter and braver and stronger than you think.
I'll get it.
Yeah. So it's, you really, I think you can have a profound effect on a woman's birth and their experience of birth just by how you are with them, and what you say to them and your whole energy around them, makes an enormous difference. And, I am forever grateful to Catherine, the midwife at Hornsby Hospital, who, just let me do my thing. And she was super curious after the birth. She said, so how did you do this research? How did you know what you wanted? Where did you find out about this? And, she was in awe that I was so well informed.
Yeah.
And that could have gone so differently. It could have gone so differently if she was somebody who was just going to go by hospital policy and the rules. And, she could have told me that she's been a midwife for 10 years and she knows more than me.
Yeah. And started just rocking our confidence. Yeah. At that.
She didn't. She just let me do it. And it was magic.
Yeah.
I think, to any woman who's listening who is considering having a vaginal birth after cesarean, believe that you can do it. Believe that your body can do it. And when you look at things like risk factors, when they tell you that there's double the risk because you've had 2 cesareans, what does that really mean? Does that go from 0.5% to 1%? So if it does, then you've still got a 99% chance of being able to do it without any issue.
Yeah, exactly. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Did you find the Winnie?
Yeah, I did. Hold on.
Well, I just want to acknowledge, I think, how all of this work that you put in pays off. And and how you've made time to share this story today in a very busy life of work and relationship and family of 5. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
No, thank you. Thank you for allowing me the platform to do so, because I think it's important, because the more positive birth stories we hear, the more women are going to have positive births.
Exactly. Sounds perfect.
So the Winnie the Pooh quote that we can end with is, always remember you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think.
Love that. Thank you, darling.
Thanks, Nadine.
So for me, intuition is really about a deep trusting and knowing within yourself that something is true. And I really think that in my first birth, I wasn't aware enough to really tell you, what I knew to be true about that. And by the time I had Ruby, just like I knew I was pregnant with her before I should have known I was pregnant with her, I knew that I was going to go into labour on the full moon, and I knew that I was going to do it when I only had the little kids in the house, and I knew that I was going to labour at home. And I feel like everything that transpired in that birth was a direct result of me trusting and knowing within myself what the right thing to do was. So with the hospital transfer, you know, my intuition was that there was something happening with my scar, and I could have stayed quiet about that and not done anything and not trusted myself. But in doing so, I was still able to have the vaginal birth that I wanted, and in some ways created more of a ripple effect than I would have done had I had a home birth, because with the hospital midwife having never seen a VBAC after 2 cesareans, you know, how many people is she going to tell that to? And how is that going to change how she cares for women with VBACs and how she advises women, and how, you know, she maybe sometimes doesn't go straight for medical intervention and she'll ask more, you know, and be more curious with other women's births. And I just think the older I get, the more intuitive, well, maybe not the more intuitive, but the more trusting of my intuition I am. I just think we're so powerful as women, and we're told that we're not powerful from a very young age, and that's kind of bullshit. I feel like the older I get, the more feminist I get as well. You know, like this was always a part of me, but yeah, I'm just so in awe of what women do every day and how powerful we really are.
I'm Nadine Richardson, and you've been listening to the She Births Show. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you would like to hear more of. You can find me and my team of amazing doulas and educators at shebirths.com and our awesome community on Instagram and Facebook. Within any good app store, you can download our free pregnancy guide via She Births, 2 separate words and plural, as well as access a range of online courses. Remember, when it comes to having a better birth, an easier transition into parenthood, your education is your empowerment. Don't forget to check out the catalogue of previous podcasts, and thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the show.